And so it is a game that you have to learn and play, and you're going to learn corporate politics, and you can't avoid it. You'll see it happening in every company you go to.
All right, good morning, and thank you for tuning into Your Come Up. We're on Your Come Up. We talk about all topics to help you come up: business, finance, personal, spiritual, and physical. Today, we're going to have a conversation here with Dan about career questions and career-oriented topics on how to set yourself up to land yourself that corporate job you dreamed of. So if this is your first time here, thank you for tuning in. Good morning, Dan. How you doing today?
Good. How's it going?
Pretty good, man. Thank you. Didn't go to the gym yet, but I'll go to the gym later on today and, break off a little sweat. So, so far, so good. In 60 seconds or less, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Dan Lacorazza. I am from south of Boston in Massachusetts. I grew up here. Went to high school and college. Always been a hard worker. I always worked in college. I always worked in high school and through college, usually 30 to 40 hours a week while trying to pay for some school. Immediately after college, went into the utility business. After a few other jobs, moving around, trying to always become the top guy at each individual job. And I was involved with a kind of a disaster with the utility company, but it was unfortunate for the company. It was fortunate for me because it was a good path for me to grow as a human being in the company, and I leveled up. And along the way, I learned a lot of tips and tricks, and it brought me into a position where not only was I being interviewed, throughout my career, but then being the interviewer, where I learned a lot of tips and tricks. The average person I want to share, and so far I've helped a couple hundred people. And I was like, hey, this is a good idea. I want to keep going with this. And people appreciate it. And I've had a really good track record of getting people jobs. So I created the what I call the resume coaches. We help you build a resume the right way to beat algorithms and get into the hiring manager's hands, give you good interview tips to get you that job that you want, and career tips. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a little bit of me.
Awesome, man. Well, given this pandemic, or even before the pandemic, however way you want to look at it, jobs are here. There's jobs you want or jobs you aspire to get. And it all starts with the resume, speaking of which. So that's your first impression to anyone looking at a resume. In your professional opinion, what are some tips to write a good, if not great, resume that plays in your favor in the eyes of a potential employer?
Well, first, what is a resume, right? A resume is the first thing, historically, what a hiring manager is going to see, and it's going to give us a little story about you.
Right.
So for us, the people who write the resume, it's a brochure or a way to sell yourself to the hiring manager. So let's just say you're looking at a vacation, you're usually going to start looking at brochures, and you're going to be comparing them, like which one's better, how is it presented, and what can I do on this vacation? And in an interview, you're telling the story about you. Who am I? What's my experience? What am I good at? The way I've laid it out is to try now. We're in an age where you don't walk into a store and say, "Here's my resume" anymore, right? We do, right? We try to throw a needle through the haystack on the online application process.
Right.
And it is a tough world out there. You're competing. There could be one job and 20,000 people are applying to it. Let's just say there's a nice corporate, big name Amazon position, 20,000 people could be applying for that job. And why are you better than the person applying next to you? There are some good tips to make a great resume, and you do need to figure out how to beat those algorithms. And the way it works is that there's a wall, right? Mm-hmm. So there's you applying, and then there's an algorithm that weeds through all the resumes, and then it gives its best candidates to the hiring manager. And then once you're in the hiring manager's hands, they get to finally read your resume. How do we beat that process? Well, you need to have a very well-maintained resume. And typically, except for lawyers, mm-hmm. I've helped a lot of people, except for lawyers, you want to keep a resume to one page. And you want to fit as much as you can onto one page. And the one thing that I found in terms of how to beat the algorithms is you need to take the keywords in a job description and trickle them into the resume. Okay. And I have a little space that's called areas of expertise, where you can, you're going to be naming off your skills, but also picking and plugging words from the job description. One thing that I say to a lot of people that is kind of controversial when I first tell them. It's like, I say, never use bullet points. That comes in terms of work experience. So when people have a resume, they're like, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, which is basically what the job description, you could copy and paste from a job description right into your resume is what people I've seen do, right? They're like, oh, I wrote sales, managing, whatever. And that's not what I'm interested in as an interviewer or hiring manager. What I want to know is what you have achieved at your job. Why are you good? You know, like, you could just be doing the same pigeonhole job all the time and never really accomplishing anything, and that's not going to make you stand out, right?
Right.
When we build the resumes, 3 things in terms of work experience is that we first describe the company, and numbers are a big game in the resume space. How big is the company? What's the revenue? Is it a $2 million or a $2 billion company or 200,000? How big in terms of how many employees? Is it 10,000 employees? Is it 50,000 employees? Like, how big is this company? How important is it? Then we move into what your position was and what you did. And this is not where I put bullet points. We put a paragraph, and you try to beef it up with some good keywords and make it sound extravagant, like, oh, this is what I did. And you can usually fit it in like three sentences or so. The most important thing I usually do is have people list off their accomplishments. As an example, I built this big $2 million project that gained the company this much money in revenue. It was really important because it lasted for 20 years and was an ongoing revenue builder business model. And that's huge. And that's a lot different than what you're going to see from the normal resume, where they're just saying, I did this, I did this, I did this. I don't care what you did. That could, you know, the next person next to you is doing that. You know what I mean? Your coworker is doing the exact same thing. Why are you different? Another big thing to have, obviously, at the top of the resume is a nice intro, like, hey, my name is so-and-so. Here's my contact info. Contact's big, right? 3 things I usually put on there is phone number, email address, and LinkedIn information. You got to have a nice, good LinkedIn page that you want to keep nice and professional.
Okay.
Following after that is going to be, the first thing that they read is going to be, I call it your mission statement. And it's going to be a small paragraph, 2 sentences, 3 sentences if you can fit it in the space, because space is a huge thing in resumes, by the way. Sure. This is who I am, why I'm good at what I do, and why I do it, and what are my values. And we usually throw that in there. And then past experience, if you were like, this is towards the bottom after the work experience. Other work experience, I call it, is like if you had, I don't know, if you were a busboy or you were a bagger at a grocery store. It's not important things to this job. We list them so we know that you've been working since high school, college, whatever the case is. You're trying to make a track record of when you started working. You don't want to have like 2-year gaps where you took a extravagant vacation for 3 years. We don't, as interviewers, we're like, hey, where were you for the last 3 years? You know what I mean? Excluding COVID, and we can get into that. And then you want to talk about, so one good thing to have is obviously your education. Every resume needs to have your education, whether it be a high school diploma, a college degree, master's degree, whatever. Now, where you place the education is important in terms of the algorithm as well. Where do you put the education? So if you're right out of high school or college, one of the first things I want to see, or a hiring manager wants to see, is your education, because that's going to be the most relevant to us. We want to know how smart you are, how well you did in college, this and that. I usually, my cutoff level is 3 years. After 3 years of work experience, and this is, you know, you're starting to get past the entry-level jobs, education needs to move down towards the bottom because it's not as important. We do need to know that you went to so-and-so college or high school, but it's not as important now. And then the last thing I throw on there, I call it technical acumen. It depends on what job you're applying to. Now, I specialize in the corporate space. We basically just put whatever programs, and it could be Microsoft Word, Excel, you know, AutoCAD, any kind of type of design software. And that basically just shows you, or the employer, hey, I can work in an office space. Right. Or you can put things like for me, I've started a couple businesses that can start a conversation. You know, I started this business, and you can put it down there as well. Just a tiny little, like, 2 lines that's left in the resume, at least to I guess the person I'm helping, to give them a little more about themselves. So yeah, that's kind of how you do it. And it's all about beating the algorithm and getting into the hands of the manager. And presentation is so key. And you want to have all the lines nicely spaced in between, good font sizes, and you can play a lot. So if you can have no work experience and make yourself look like a rock star, or you can have so much experience and you need to condense it and just get the most important stuff in there.
Speaking of fonts, is there a preferred or a popular font that when an employer sees it, it's like, yep, I like it, or pretty much any font for the most part that you're comfortable with or that the person's comfortable with.
Yeah, font size between 8 and 10. So the more important stuff you're going to keep to the 10, right? Because you want to kind of just stick out. And the 8 size is for the stuff, it could be like your accomplishments. There's a list of them and you want to kind of shorten it. But it's not as important as, education or something like that.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's say, hey, I submitted the resume. I beat the algorithm. Potential employer looks at the resume. Okay, it crosses all the T's, dots all the I's. The keywords on the resume match the keywords on the job description. Now it's time for the interview. During the interview, in the eyes of the prospective employer, what are trigger words, keywords, attire, and or behaviors they look for before they decide to hire you?
Sure. So let's start with the first impression, because this is obviously where you're going to make an impression on a company. Mm-hmm. Now, remember, you're walking in, you're trying to sell yourself to the company, and you're also trying to figure out if this is a job for you. The first thing that's ever going to happen is you're going to walk through the door and they're going to look at you. And obviously, we're in a time where not too many people like to say it, but it's true. First impression is key, and your attire matters. And I always say that it's never too bad. It's not a bad thing to overdress. Dress to impress, but also dress professional. You don't want to wear a tuxedo to an interview, but you also don't want to wear shorts and sandals. You know what I mean? I usually wear a suit and a tie. I usually wear either black as a male, black or tan, or black, tan, or brown, like the tannish brown color. And a blue tie is usually a blue or black tie. I would try to keep it to blue. Red says, some other things. Red associates.
Red's power. Red's power right there.
Right. Right, and then obviously khaki pants or the suit pants that it came with, and then brown or black shoes for male. And then for women, I can't speak too much on women, but I have interviewed women. You want to make sure you're as professional as you could possibly be. And, typically since we're in this type of environment, you don't want to wear revealing attire. You know what I mean? So a nice button-down shirt, black, tan, khaki pants, high heels or flats. Nowadays, I start to see more of the flats. I think they're kind of in style for women, but either one is good. The second thing you want to do is make sure you're greeting them as a human being. So first of all, you want to introduce yourself as nice, clear, hey, my name is Dan Lacorazza, and give out a handshake. And make sure your handshake is firm. I'm sure people have heard how to approach a handshake. Right. And just make sure it's firm enough, not limp. It shows that, hey, I'm here and I'm ready to be confident and work. And that's the next thing is you got to walk in there with confidence, right? A huge part of interviews, and we can get into this later, is to walk in there with confidence. I always say to everyone going to an interview, say you're walking in with the hiring sign and say, I'm your man or I'm your woman. And you hand it to them and you approach it as such. Then we get into the interview. And the first thing I always say when you're actually sitting down is you're going to start with human-to-human conversation, right? We're all human beings here. You're obviously going to be nervous. They could be nervous as well. So I would say, hey, let's find something in common. Like, as corny as it is, how was the drive? How's the weather? Maybe, hey, I was golfing last night, or something that you can find in contact. My experience is always golf. I'm not a golfer, but I'll pretend to oh yeah, I play putt-putt with the girlfriend.
I'm just like, man, miniature golf with the kids.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, whatever. Just like what we just did. You want to find something in common that brings us both down to the same page, and then get in the interview. So in corporate, there's all types of interviews, but typically an interview will go as such as they'll ask questions to pertain to what's called the STAR method. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No.
But the STAR method stands for situation, task, action, and results. Okay. And they may not call it the STAR method, but they're looking for answers as such. And the reason why they do it is because you can give a very clear result on the spot. The situation, they're going to give you a task. I have an example. They're going to give you an example of a time when, and how did you accomplish your task, right? Right. And so the situation, okay, I was doing so-and-so, and the task was I had to create an agenda for my boss, and the action was I created the agenda using Excel, and then the result was he was happy with my organization of the agenda for him. Maybe it's a sales manager or something, right? And then they're going to ask you situations on the spot, and you can look, and I always say look back to a job in high school, maybe it was sports, extracurricular activity did you do in college? Maybe you had a job and you played this role as a job. And usually the job is, if you've had a previous job, you've more likely been in an environment where you're presented with a situation and task, action, and a result. And then they're perfect examples. And you just try to, on the spot, think of the best one that you can. It's hard. And I always say this when I'm interviewing an interviewee. Take your time. I can repeat the question. It's not a time thing, but this is how they're going to rank you. And now STAR method, usually, and I've been in multiple companies that we rank the employee based off the questions. You want to answer it nice and clear. And the most important thing about the STAR method is that you give a very clear result. And the result is what they're going to be writing down. And they're going to rank you. Usually it's between a 1 through 5 or 1 through 10 system. And at the end, it's going to equal a value. And then they rank the candidates. The value could be 100, it could be 200. And so if you have 100 and the next guy came in or she had a 200, they're going to probably pick that 200. So you're trying to rank well. Don't be nervous. They're going to be writing down, but you just want to be as clear as you can. I can't stress that enough. By the way, when you come to an interview, you want to be prepared. I usually come with a little notebook, like a briefcase notebook. You can open it up. It looks professional. I always have a pen. I always have a notepad. I always have at least 5 resumes. And I hand it out anyways. They usually come prepared. The interviewers, they'll come prepared with the resumes. But just in case, make sure you have them because this is
But it also shows you come prepared too by doing that.
Exactly. And then some other things to come prepared with as well is questions to ask in the interview. You're asking the interview or the company questions. So let's get into this. When you're done with the STAR questions or any, like I call them STAR questions, they could just be the company questions, but it's going to be in a STAR manner. And if you aren't asked STAR questions, you should answer questions in such a STAR method. So the next thing, I would run through your resume to say, hey, can I just take some time to run through my work here? Because even the interviews that I've been in where I don't have control or I'm the interviewer and I don't have the say of where the interview is going because there's a person next to me who's higher than me in the corporate rank. I always say like, hey, let's give the interviewer or interviewee time to talk about themselves that isn't just our questions. Because usually it's prepared by HR and you have people who come through the interview who aren't totally prepared. Sometimes they are. They're just trying to go through all the candidates, right? Mm-hmm. So, hey, let's make this personal. This is my resume. This is why I do what I do. This is my work experience, and then I always say the accomplishments that you've listed on your resume is a really good talking point to give to the company. And this is going to serve you better than the person who hasn't done this. And right. Why are you so good? Well, I accomplished all these things. I'm not telling you what I did. Here's what I've accomplished.
I also heard it's probably good to stay away from the sports topic. Like, I don't know, here's my experience when I was doing an interview. I'm a Vikings fan. Turns out the brother across the table from me was a Bears fan. I didn't get the job, and I don't know if it had to do with because he was a Bears fan.
You want to stay away from controversial topics, so you don't want to bring up like, hey, I'm a Democrat or a Republican, and I like to be involved in these, or I like the Patriots versus the Vikings. You can just say, I like to play football in my spare time. Like, these are your interests. Like, what do you like to do? Yes. One question that I personally always like to ask is, how are you a human? Why aren't you a robot? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to see that you're a robot, so what do you like to do in your free time? That's what I ask. That's a little bit of, an unorthodox question that I personally ask, and I wish was asked more because I want to know what you like to do. Is there any more common interests that I can carry this conversation on? Because it gives me a little bit more of an insight into the person's life. Like, oh, they like golf, or they like the gym. And if they like the gym person, I'm like, oh, this is a guy, because I know what the values of the gym bring. So
just don't bench press the HR person. I think we're good.
don't do that. This is very important. At the end of an interview, they usually say, hey, do you have any questions for us? And I would say never, ever, ever say no.
No, you got to ask them something.
Yeah. This is the time where you're going to try to figure out if this is the company for you. Now, what you've done previously is say, hey, I'm the company, I'm your guy. Mm-hmm. But now I want to know if you're my employer. I want to know if I want to work for you. This is where you get a little insight to the day-to-day. So a good question to ask is, can you describe the average day? Or what am we're going to be working closely with? Or what are you guys looking for in a candidate that would make them perfect for the job? What's something you don't like about the company? Yeah. Where do you see me in 5 years? Or, stuff like that. When you walk out of the interview, you don't want to be left with like, I really don't know anything about the company.
Sure.
And a lot of people just kind of go in there like, I hope I get the job. Well, you could also have 5 jobs or 5 interviews lined up. You don't want to just take the first one because, I mean, at the end of it, you want to be able to compare and contrast.
You're pretty good at interviewing. You've done interviews. As an interviewer, what's your favorite question to ask? And if they answer incorrectly, ooh boy, that's costly.
I asked the candidates, why are manhole covers round? And
why are manhole coverage round?
Why are manhole covers round?
Okay.
And I'm not really looking for a correct answer. I'm looking to see how they answer the question. Now, this gives me a little insight to how they think. How long does it take them to give an answer? Are they just trying to give me a generic one? Are they genuine people? It can tell me a lot. They could say, well, because that's just how they're made. I don't know. And if they give me like a quick answer like that, then I know they're not a critical thinker and it's not a person that I want. You know, they can come and pretend to be a good interview the whole time. And some people are good at just kind of making stuff up. But if you can't do it right there on the spot with a hard critical thinking question like that, that tells me a lot. But if you sit there for a while, if you ever seen Elon Musk answer a question on like the Joe Rogan, that's what I'm looking for. And then I want to see how are you going to answer this question? Well, they're round because the steel mill made them that way, and the circumference of the manhole cover is important. The real answer is that they're round because they can't fall through the hole. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? As opposed to why aren't they triangle or square? Because if they're triangle, they can fall through the hole. That's the real answer. But I don't care about that. I want to see how you're answering the question, and I think that's important. I think it's really important to see how a person is going to critically think. Personally. Now, not all companies are going to do that to you, but I've been personally through them where they try to catch you in those moments. They're trying to test you. And that's be prepared in an interview to be tested. But answer it as most genuinely and honest as you can to show them who you really are. Because you don't want to, you know, some people ask me like, hey, you're going to shave your beard before an interview. I'm like, well, no, because then, you know, I'm going to grow my beard back. I don't want to come off as a person who I'm not. So being you is the best thing you can do because you're going to be sitting and working for them for 5, 10, 20 years. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah.
Okay, let's say they offer you the job. You take the job after some salary negotiation, of course, which we will definitely do a video on that later on. How does one play the corporate politic game in their favor?
Well, before you did say once they accept the job, I did want to say at the last thing of the interview, you want to make sure that you get everyone's email who you're talking to and have a follow-up email saying, thank you so much for meeting with me. It was a pleasure meeting with you. I'm so excited for potentially be in this role. I'm really looking forward to it. You know, there's a lot of ways you can do it. And I usually say within the 24 hours after the interview so that you're fresh in their mind. And that could be a difference of someone not giving a follow-up email. So, and it's really important. It shows that you care. So anyways,
that's corporate politics right there. That's corporate politics right there.
Right. So with corporate politics, what I found, so it's new school companies that are like maybe a startup company versus an old school that's very well known and established corporate company like office cubicle stuff. They're a little bit two different games. The ones that are more old school have a very big corporate politics from what I've seen. And what are corporate politics? Well, what are politics? You know, who's running the show? What department can help out who? You know, how do I get up and make a good name for myself? That's politics, right? Well, corporate politics, right? And so it is a game that you have to learn and play, and you're going to learn corporate politics, and you can't avoid it. You'll see it happening in every company you go to. And we'll keep it general on how to move up. You're going to try to make a name for yourself. You know, I always say, let's just say you're importing data into a data calculator, right? Mm-hmm. You know, if you have 5 people in the department just entering data all day, as a boss or a director of a company or a president, I don't care about these guys. They're just entering data. I don't know what they do. I just know they enter the data. As an employee and as a person who wants to move up in the company because I want to make more money, how do I stand out from the person next to me? And this is where you start to play the corporate politics. And I always say, get on every single meeting as you can. Get involved with everything that you can in the company that is meaningful. So not like just entering extra data for another 8 hours after your 8 hours have ended. Right. Get into big time projects like, hey, can I be part of this project that I heard you over talking about in the corner there with, or in this meeting that I was a part of? Wow, that's really interesting. And I really want to grow as an employee. Maybe get involved with these meetings. And I say, if you have valid and important topics to talk about, try talk in the meeting. And what does this do for you? Well, it recognizes, so my name's Dan, oh, wow, Dan had a really good point in that meeting that we had last week about the corporate budget. And I know he's just a data analyst, but he has really good ideas. And if you start doing that more and more, your name gets recognized. Then when it comes for review time, you're like, hey, I was part of this meeting. I did this extra work. I was part of this project. And that's going to make me look better than the guy next to me just entering data all day. I'm part of these extra projects, and maybe you want to start leading projects. And when it comes on, most companies do reviews every year, like a yearly review. Try to use the words, I led this project, or I co-led, or I was part of. And that helps you move up in the game. But I always say in the corporate politics game, the loudest guy wins. Now, I'm not saying the most annoying loudest guy wins. Being recognized is important. And then there's corporate politics, limbo Django, whatever you want to call it, the term. But like saying, wow, Bill, that's a really great idea. As bad as the idea was, Bill, that's a great idea. You know what? Actually, to add to your idea, this might help as well. And he might be like, wow, Dan, that's a great idea. And now we have this relationship. And moving to the next thing, building relationships is so big. Try to talk to as many people as you can into the department, our department. If you can start making friends with managers and directors, that helps you out too, because it's, again, just getting recognized. If you are on a meeting with a director and he's mentioning he likes, I did this the other day. This guy likes dirt bikes, and I personally just got a dirt bike. I'm like, hey, you got a dirt bike? I just got a dirt bike. And now we're talking on the email. He's sending me links to dirt bike races, and we have that thing in common. He's the director of another department, and that's going to help our relationship build. And again, just one more thing for recognition. So recognition is key. Being the nicest guy, genuinely the nicest guy you can, if you can. Sometimes you have to be fake, but that's just the game. And whether you care or you don't care about whatever the situation is, just being a positive person. Don't be negative. Show really good ideas. Get involved in as many things as you can. That's important. You want to be in valuable quality work, not the day-to-day, like pigeonholed stuff that makes your name worth value. And then you can start climbing the ranks.
That's awesome, man. Hey, you know what, Dan? Thank you again for coming on today, and thank you guys for watching. If you like the content we're throwing up, don't forget to drop us a like, hit the subscribe and the bell notification. And I am going to have Dan back to talk about salary negotiations and more interview questions. I had to ace them so you can play that corporate politic game in your favor. Thanks again for watching. Until next time.